Welcome, everyone. If you're open to it, we'd love to see your face, have your video on, and then this can be a pretty casual conversation. We showed you a lot of things. Maybe you have some feelings about those things, some reaction to those things. We also gave the prompt of workflows, jobs as code. And I don't know, Julia, do you want to kick us off with a specific question or just open it up for whatever people are feeling?
Maybe I'll start it off with a specific description, if that sounds good. Do you want to handle workflows first, or you want to do jobs?
One and the same is my answer. Like, I think it's all the same stuff. And so there isn't a long open issue in the DBT repo for DBT workflows. And it's something I've thought about for literal years. And like come around to this idea that actually we can just make DBT tasks better. That's what the build command is trying to do a smarter thing with the DAG we got, and trust you to use the commands that exist in the order you need them to work in an orchestration and deployment environment that feels right to you. So I've moved away from the idea of a DBT workflow and more to jobs being code.
Yeah, and maybe just to make sure we're all like on the same page and understanding when we say jobs as code, like today, right? The only way to do jobs is in DBT Cloud. You have a nice user interface where you can set some of the configuration explicitly, right? All the run steps. And we want to move more towards a way where you can version control your jobs, define them in YAML files. And so it becomes a lot easier to replicate jobs in different environments and make sure that you're not accidentally introducing errors into jobs with a slip of the finger in a UI. Is this something that people have thought about in the past? Is it interesting? How are people getting like a temperature check on thinking about jobs as code?
Feel free to unmute, speak up. You can also drop any questions, comments, whatever in the staging-breakout 2 Slack channel in DBT Slack. Who's got a thought?
You probably have thoughts about how jobs are handled today, right? Since if you're using DBT Cloud, that's probably something you're used to. Are there particular challenges that people have with the current setup that you might want to share, or things that you particularly like? I could start rattling off things I've heard to increase likelihood of conversation, but would love to hear from people.
A common pattern we have is like putting up a pull request and putting actions into that pull request that you have to take after merge, updating version in DBT Cloud or run job X. And I think that introduces room for error. Some of that I think probably doesn't belong in code, but putting that in code could help.
So are you talking specifically about things that you want to do after your new code has been merged, so triggering jobs in a specific way?
Yeah, that was perhaps a bad example, but like something where you have to update how a regular job runs as a result of a change you're making. And so you have to make that as a separate manual step after merge. We had an instance where like we were upgrading DBT and someone didn't quite realize the impact of merging the pull request with the required project change. And suddenly all the runs started failing in the middle of the night because it had been prematurely merged.
So you have to perfectly time when you edit the field in the UI with when you press merge
exactly.
in your repo versus just being able to like update all the code for your project and also your deployment, merge it.
Exactly.
That's what gets used. Yeah. I feel that about a DBT version upgrade too. You have to like perfectly time the production job. Like, oh, now I want 020. Oh, we're ready to go. And then.
Hi, everyone. So I had the issue yesterday, but I could find the temporary solution for it. Was like we are like following the DevOps method for our company. So I'm a lead data scientist and engineer. In the like we have 3 branches in our repository. One is test, another one is stage, and the last one is a master branch. So our web developer team, they also have the 3 branches, different branches, but they wanted to grab the data from the stage branch, which means we wanted to, when the stage branch is updated, updated, like for somehow we have a table in some database or a schema. So because I'm using the Redshift, so we wanted, for example, if like when you run the job is going to write that your view and table in the target schema that you when you set up your warehouse you put as a target. Temporary solution I found was like create the different environment, staging and prod. For the staging, I also create like another job in that environment, which is the PR period. Like when the job is where I name it PR staging, which means like when the test branch updated and I'm going to pull the pull from test like to the stage, is going to automatically update the staging job. So for the staging job, I defined the like new schema, which is the stage schema. And right now I have, yes, the final schema when you set up your warehouse was like, I name it like prod schema, but by creating the new job, a new environment, I could be able to create the table and view also in our with the stage like process. So my question is, so did I do the right thing? First of all, is there any other way that we can, for example, for your test, you want to have some particular table in your test, like in your warehouse, and with the schema, which the name of the schema is test. So for the stage also, you want to have a like schema, which name is the stage schema. So I want to know, is there any other solution I can do it or no, I did the right thing? And the second question I have like is about the YML file. So when you want to define the source, I want to do all our client project under one project. For example, I'm going to create a project named the client project in DBT. So instead of create a different like project for each client, I want to all the client project be on the main project.
I think I understand the challenge you're describing. It's sometimes you have jobs that do very similar things, but are in different environments, and they have maybe different schema names. This is like called environment promotion. Right now, without environment variables and without jobs as code, this can be tedious. You feel like you're reproducing a lot of the same logic in your jobs in multiple environments. We want to get to a state where it's different, where you can define your job once, perhaps using an environment variable, define what schema should be used depending on the environment. And then this similar job could easily map to multiple environments, whether it's staging or production or whatever you might have. So it might not feel like the most natural way today, but I think we're building some products specifically to help make that feel a bit easier for you.
It feels like the key thing here is we need to have the right constructs in place for you to be able to mix and match and find the right approach in any, because and this is the thing about deployment, right? Is like it's the only person who's ever had your exact deployment is you 5 minutes ago. Right now, today, there's so much variety and variance, and we can definitely do more, talk more, publish more about the kinds of patterns that we see and what we see folks being really successful, just like Julia shared about, like, here's a pattern for environment management that we see lots of folks adopting. But really the most important thing is like having those initial constructs. So like job definitions as code, the ability to define and use environment variables across different environments so that it's the same code definition, but by switching the value of that environment variable, you could like totally change, oh, here's the database that we're targeting now. Or, and actually, Julie, I haven't even thought about this, but like environment variables as an input to the kind of job as code file we're thinking of, we're talking about, which steps you want to be in that job, maybe as a conditionally controllable thing based on the environment it's running in. There's some really cool places we can go with this just by setting up the initial construct.
Can I open up the discussion? I'm curious, I got some mixed feedback on jobs as code when I pulled people in the Slack. Some people felt like, actually, I really do having the ability to quickly change in the UI. I think, Josh, maybe you chimed in on this thread as well. I like being able to add a job ad hoc and run it without first needing to version control. Maybe by thumbs up for people to participate Do you want to version control absolutely every job you create? If so, put a thumbs up. If not, do you want to put a thumbs down? Do we have thumbs down? We don't have thumbs down. We can put a thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay. For the naysayers, Michael or Josh, I saw your thumbs. Do you want to, anyone want to share a couple of sentences on your feelings there?
Yeah, I think you said it. I think Josh may have said it in that thread that you posted in. I like the idea of version controlling jobs, especially like the main ones that we use. But in our setup, we have a couple of, we call them manual jobs. So if you just need to manually update a couple of things after a merge, that's the sort of thing that, you know, the speed in which you can do it without having to deal with version controlling it would be good. Of course, well, you could also set it up where you don't require approvals on your PRs for that stuff, and you could just merge it in your code base. But I'm assuming the YAML file for this stuff would live in your project and it would just flow into cloud. But yeah, having that flexibility of being able to version control stuff would be great, but with the flexibility of not having to version control everything.
Got it. So you feel like perhaps there are some jobs that are more blessed, more people have signed off on it, and you would be okay with some jobs being version controlled. But I mean, we have an ad hoc job too in our internal analytics where you've made one model change and you want to make sure it's updating in prod quickly. So you just change the commands and boom, runs.
Yep.
I think that's pretty common. Are there other like less important jobs that I'm maybe not imagining that you'd like to have that really flexibility of making changes live?
Not that I can think of offhand. When you originally brought it up in Slack, the manual jobs were the thing that immediately came to my mind.
That's helpful feedback.
I'd be curious to hear if there's anyone on this call who does not use DBT Cloud to deploy DBT. Like maybe this conversation seems wacky, like we're starting from a pretty weird premise. I imagine if you use an Airflow or a Dagster or another orchestrator, your jobs probably are version controlled and have been this whole time. Is that fair to say?
I can speak up. I use cloud at my current gig. At my last job, we did not. We were using Prefect.
Oh, cool.
And so that was version controlled, obviously, through that repo. So
did you find like it was a challenge if you just wanted to be able to make a quick change to that's a lot of friction, a lot of overhead to, and then fire some code off into a PR and hope like, okay, this is gonna work.
I don't think I had the responsibility to make any of those like manual job changes. Like at my new place, I had a little more responsibility. So I didn't have to deal with that friction personally.
Sure. I'm a forever optimist about many things, which is an affliction at times. I believe there's a best of both worlds option here, right? Or like, I remember working back at my last job at this company called Fishtown Analytics when I was a consultant using DBT. I worked with a number of companies who used a Jenkins or a Luigi even. And it was like really tough to I just want to run these a couple of models. I also want to go get lunch. So I don't really want to do it locally on my computer. I would spend like 30, 45 minutes just making it so that then I could leave for an hour, come back and my models in a staging environment or whatever the case may be. So I really think that there's a case to be made on both sides here. And I'm even doing the thought experiment right now of what if our jobs had always been code and Juliet, we had been, the feature we're talking about is you can edit them in the UI now. There's a real point of synchronicity that we could try to reach here.
Yeah, the other thing I'll add is I think the reason why we have manual jobs can be solved in other ways, like run on merge, right? Every time you merge new code, automatically trigger all the new changed models for you. And by the way, we have this fancy new DBT build command, and we can make sure we're only running things that have been modified. So as soon as your code logic change, which you want to be version controlled, we'll make sure your production environment is up to date with the latest models immediately once code has been changed, and we'll probably reduce the need to have that ad hoc or manual job. And every job you then create has a little bit more weight and has a little bit more purpose. And you're okay taking an extra couple of steps to make sure that logic is exactly as you want it. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to throw in, like, we have some clients that use a competitor hosted DBT option that has jobs as code. And I do see a lot of, as someone who was like an early dissenter about the ad hoc jobs, like I see a lot of value in that as well. And I think a best of both worlds, or as you say, a solving the ad hoc jobs through another avenue, I think would be an awesome solution.
Does this wrap it one?
It does, yes. Anyone want to get just like one last word in edgewise? We're gonna wrap it here. Going once, going twice, going.
We're losing people. Anyways, thank you all for joining. If you have more comments, feel free to reach out in the Slack, and Jared, Cohen, and I will also hang out for just an extra couple minutes if people want to ask questions.
In here? Yeah, in here. We'll be here for another minute or two. Thank you all so much. Thanks for coming, bringing your comment, making us feel like we're building the right stuff, or telling us if we're not. Those were both really useful, really helpful.
If you guys are going to hang out, I did have a question that I hope fits in line with the jobs as code discussion.
Yeah,
so
please.
We're in a bit of a greenfield environment with DBT and Snowflake. And so we're looking into Snowflake stream objects as our CDC processing option. And so the question came up of would we use the Snowflake recommended tasks to process all of our CDC streams, or could we orchestrate some of those jobs with DBT jobs? And pros and cons of each. Is anybody doing it the DBT way? Is that more of a jobs as code thing or not? The obvious question is, if we have 1,000 tables that we want a CDC stream on and 1,000 tasks/jobs to process those, how would we scale to that level? And what's the right approach for doing that?
Do you have like a real SLA, a real need for low latency final data, transform data? Or is it more like handling the data as it's coming in and making sure you're not missing any of it?
Yeah, there definitely isn't a need for real time. I don't think there's a proper SLA around any of it, but we would probably want to do our CDC at least once a day. There could be an argument for intraday changes. It's manufacturing data, so possibly. I think the question is more around, do we want to be in the business of managing 1,000 jobs in Snowflake or 1,000 jobs in DBT or some other way?
Gosh, yeah. The thing I have to say here is Snowflake changes streams. All of it can be accessible with SQL. Anything you can write in SQL, you can also write a DBT macro for, a run operation for. If what you want is the ability to programmatically create those things, update those things, it's not really what like DBT's bread and butter is, but it totally can be done. The other piece of it though, you said a day, maybe intraday. That's like batch processing as good as it gets. And definitely if your need is not, hey, we have a 5-minute latency for all the way from the start to all the way at the end, there's really no need to invest in this like really complex, multifaceted, like thousands of tasks all kind of sitting on top of each other and not really running in dependency order, but just like running with a low enough latency that it sort of just hopefully cobbles together and works. It sounds like it's not even going to be 1,000 DBT jobs. It might be 1,000 DBT models or objects in your project. But at the end of the day, it's one run or one build, really.
Could I make
someone else, yeah, please.
We're in the same boat. We've got somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,000 tables. A lot of it we're pulling into Snowflake through the Click Replicate product. They have a lot of different plugins for it. And so we're able to move everything into landing areas in near real time into Snowflake and then process it from there.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then if you can define DBT sources for those things, have a reliable column or metadata field, like Snowflake offers, especially for data staged externally, a lot of cool fields for that sort of thing, maybe like a partition key. And you can pass that into the loaded at field. You'll also be able to test for the freshness of that stuff in DBT, view it all in your DAG, build models on top of it. Yeah.
They have an API available as well. So besides using their own UI with notifications and stuff, if those jobs fail, we're able to query their API for additional information and be able to make decisions off of that as well. So we found that the API access to that's been very good as well.
Sorry, which API was that? The Click or the DBT?
The Click, we use, they have a product called Enterprise Manager, which you can have multiple replicate servers, and Enterprise Manager has an API that gives the status of all the jobs, and you can actually kick them off and stop them. And we're looking at orchestrating that with Airflow at the moment.
Cool.
Okay.
Pretty cool.
So what I'm hearing is that as long as it's not a super low latency requirement, if you're doing it mostly in batch processing, then it does make a lot of sense to run it under DBT jobs to orchestrate all of those, even if there's 1,000 stream processing jobs that way.
I really think so. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. I think we're gonna call it at 5 over. Thanks for hanging out, sticking around for a few extra, and for joining our breakout session. Obviously the better of the two breakout sessions, but the other one is great, equally great, just even more equally great. Julia, any parting thoughts, parting words?
Nope, this has been a lot of fun. If you have follow-up questions, we're around in Slack. Thanks all.
Awesome. Thanks everybody.